guys? It is John from Side Hustle Experiment. In today's video, I have my friend John Song on the channel. He's another six-figure seller. He's scaling his business very aggressively. Our businesses are kind of at the same point right now. So it was a really great conversation. I thought we were just doing a Zoom call. He asked if we could record it, and I was like, yeah, sure. So this is a really great example too of how I would do a Zoom call with someone else. If I'm just trying to get to know them, or they want to do a call with me, or I want to do a call with them. So it's just a natural conversation, not necessarily like an interview per se. We covered like three main topics, and then it kind of just spun off in different ways. So we covered networking, why it's important, how we do it, how people network with us, and what resonates with us. Do we like like I talk about some things that someone approached me that I don't really like when people do, and then some things I like. We talk about scaling. We're both scaling very quickly, and he scaled a really unique way, using credit. So I think that's kind of cool. I did a much different path, so we talk about that. We talk about merchant fulfilling items. We talk about the importance of test buying, how we test buy. I think I gave a pretty good example of exactly how I was able to test buy this year and what I found doing that. We talk about how we find our best products, how we find them, how we search for them, how we even came about the categories we're doing. So that we also cover replenishables, how we're finding that. And we talk manual sourcing versus reverse sourcing, what we prefer, what we're finding. And there's a lot of other stuff in there that just kind of shot off in different directions. I really think there's a lot of great knowledge in here. And it's very real and raw. I didn't have my VA edit any of this. I just cut the first part out, full disclosure, because we were just like talking before we got started and it wasn't even relevant. So yeah, enjoy. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. If you don't know about the channel and you're new here, my name is John. I've done over $1 million on Amazon since I got started to do online arbitrage. And my goal here is to teach you how to sell on Amazon. So, because a lot of people hate their jobs, and selling on Amazon is a great way to not have to work your job anymore. So subscribe if you're into that, like the video, comment below, let me know what you think about it, and enjoy it.
I know a lot of people talk about like sourcing videos, and that's kind of, I guess, the information's out there at this point. It's not really something that we can go over that hasn't been gone over. I've watched a lot of your videos as well. So I guess I wanted to talk more about like the nuances of the business, stuff that isn't talked about, that can ultimately help you as an Amazon business owner, to help you grow it, network and whatnot. So those are kind of the topics that I want to go over today, so that we can offer some value to the people watching. And so I think one of the things I wanted to talk about right off the bat was networking, right? A lot of people don't understand how to network, and they just think that they can just ask somebody for help, and you'll get some opportunities like that, but you really have to be able to offer value in return to be able to maximize your ability to network. And especially in this world, where a lot of information is gatekept, people want to only help you if technically you could help them.
Yeah.
And it sucks to say that, but in a sense, the matter of networking is a bit transactional. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you network, and how are you able to position yourself so that other people were willing to help you? Because that's the whole point of networking, right? Is to be able to get information from other people.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And like networking is so key. It's insane. Like I can't even tell you how much like Q4 stuff I bought just from like text messages to like DMs and like, oh, this person's having a sale, like check out this or check out that. And I mean, obviously, like I send the same stuff out too. I do think it was interesting about like a week ago, someone like reached out to me and they were just like, hey, if I send you a Walmart lead, like, will you send me one back? And I was just like no, like it's like I'm doing other stuff. Like it's just like no, like
Yeah.
for me, like I would have just sent the lead, be like, hey, like what's up? I know you're busy. Like check this out. I think it's a good idea to buy it or whatever. And then like I think one of the misconceptions is too, it's like is what it's gonna come off like bad, but in a way, it's like as I've grown on like Instagram and YouTube, I just like can't help everyone anymore. Like it's just too much.
Yeah. No,
There's
I
like
understand
30 or
that.
40 DMs every day of people like, hey, like how do I do this or how do I do that? And like I'm really trying to think of ways to like, I don't know, maybe build a Discord or like just a central location because it's just too hard.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of offering value, I think just a lot. You could just like let someone know there's a sale, um, pass along a lead. There's just like lots of little stuff. Or like right now, like I'm using like a software, like I'm beta testing it from someone, and like the only way to like get access to it is like through my link or like through someone who's already using it. So I mean that's like super valuable, right? There's a software out there that's like not like on the market, and like I just like sent it to like a bunch of people that I'm like, pretty close with. Um, but yeah, I mean it is like hard in a way because I think you also have to realize that when you are like reaching out to someone, like they are pretty busy. Like they have like established networks. Like there's some stuff that like probably like 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, like let's jump on a Zoom or let's do this or let's do that. I just don't have like that time like anymore. Like it's just
Yeah,
as things are
100%.
growing, it's Q4, like it's hard. So like when someone like I think a lot of people do, like it is like somewhat transactional, but I don't think like you could almost send someone a lead or a sale and like expect something back. Like it's just maybe, but like in most cases, like if you're gonna give, like give. Like that's what Gary Vee would be like.
Yeah.
Just give it, don't expect anything back, and if something comes back, like that's great, but like don't
Yeah.
do it to like get something back because like it's not genuine and like if that's how you are, like the whole like, oh, I'll send you a lead if you send me a lead. Like, no, like that's I don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with that. Like, that's not how I roll. Like, no.
And and then to add to that, I think a lot of people kind of think that value has to be given in sense of money or like a lead. It doesn't always have to be that, right? Where a value can be a friendship, right? Because as an entrepreneur or Amazon seller, you kind of can only talk to other Amazon sellers about this stuff. You
Yeah.
mentioned ACE into your family, they have no clue what that means, and so like a lot of people, they're looking for friends in this space. So if you can build a genuine friendship, who wouldn't want to help their friend, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's where a lot of people get lost with networking. They're so focused on the transactional aspect. It is transactional, but
Yeah.
you got to offer a little bit more than that, right? You need to strike up friendships with people, and they can tell if you're being genuine or if they're just kind of like trying to use you to build their business. And people are not stupid, they have like a sixth sense where they can just kind of get the vibe that, hey, something's a little off here. Like, I don't know why he's maneuvering like this,
Yeah.
right? Is he just trying to use me to get my good leads, or does he actually want to build a friendship and that's going to last over time?
Yeah. Great.
Another thing I think too that's really important is that you know, in the beginning it is tough to network, right? Because um your sales are going to be lower than somebody who's established and doing 50,000 a month. And so I think one of the best ways to network in that sense is to go find somebody in your exact position to where you guys can build together because you're at the same point, you're not competing against each other. And then you guys can build the business on that aspect, to where like that helped me in the beginning when I really didn't know what was going on. I could help him source on a specific website that he didn't know about, and then he would help me with a website I had no clue about. So in a sense, we're both able to get leads and build But at the same time too, I think it's really important to always focus on the friendship aspect. People get really lost in that, and they think it's just like, oh, let me just network so I can build the business off of this guy, right? Instead of like become friends with him. Like like most people, once they strike a genuine friendship, they will automatically want to help you. You know, like you said, like that person that just sent you a lead, I'm sure you have like a friendship with that person where they're like, here you go, man, like enjoy it. Like it's not like, hey, I gave you this, can you give me something back, please? It's more like, hey, man, you're my friend, take this.
Exactly. And yeah, I do think a lot of like, as you said, like, yeah, it is much easier with like bigger sales and like, or you have a network, like I could drop some people's names, like, hey, like such a reach out or whatever. But like, I think like a really slept on way is ask really good questions. Like, because those, I will answer those first. You're gonna like DM me, like, oh, how do you get started on Amazon? Or like, do you have a YouTube video on this? Like, just go on YouTube and look. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, just go there, like, find it or whatever. Or be like, hey, could you make a video on this? Like, I just looked on the channel, like, I
Yeah.
can't find it or whatever. Um, you know what I mean? It's like when you ask really good questions or be like, hey, man, like, I saw you just started, like, you're crushing it. Like, I want to be like that, like, someday. Like, any pointers is kind of like I don't really like that question, but like, hey, or more specifics, like, hey, I have 5 grand, like just getting started. Like, what would you suggest? Do you have a video that I watch or something like that to be able to
Yeah.
get around that?
And to piggyback on that, I think a lot of people are more inclined to help you if they see that you're taking initiative. You
Exactly.
know, you don't really want to help someone that's like not even doing the basics of with the internet, with how much information is free out there. If you're not
Oh,
doing your own research, like why would anybody want to help you? Like they're just you just want a shortcut, right? As opposed to if you're like you've done your research, you're like, hey, I've watched like these 40 videos and I just feel like this one topic has not been covered. What do you think? That's something where you, as someone who can offer value back, you start to you get intrigued because you're like, okay, he's watched all my videos and it's something that I, as someone that's providing value, haven't covered, right? So then you're more inclined to want to help them as opposed to somebody that asks you such a basic question. It's like, dude, if you're already asking me this basic question, like you put no time in, you know?
exactly. I was actually talking to someone right before this, and they were just like, I sent them a DM because I saw them post something interesting on Twitter. I was like, "Yo, we should talk," and they're like, "Oh man, like I didn't realize like it was like just like a normal person, like just want to like get on Zoom or whatever." And they were like, "Dude, like you changed like my life. Like I like listened to you on a podcast, and you said to use like keep a product finder and like put someone's store in there and like." And how to sort it or whatever. And he's like, I can't tell you like how much money I made off of that. So like there's a lot of times too, it's like, hey, I watched your video, like I made like $1,000, $2,000 or whatever. Like, how can I like make more? Then I'm like, okay, like this person's like doing it, they're like watching stuff. Like, I pretty much at this point have like a video on pretty much every probably
Yeah.
question or topic that could be asked. I mean, maybe not, but like in terms of OA books, like pretty much everything's out there. Um, but yeah, that's always a surefire way to be like, yo, I saw you did this, I tried it, I did it, it worked. Like, I need some
Yeah.
help. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
And also, to add to that, like that type of genuine compliment goes very far. Like
Oh
not
yeah,
a fake one where you're just trying to like gas them up, but when you're actually genuine and you're like, hey, your content really helped me so much, that makes you feel valued as a person who's offering value for free to other people. And it makes you want to give more information out, right? As opposed to when someone's kind of being fake about it, you can sense it and you're just not as inclined to help them. And so I think that's one thing that's very slept on is being genuine and saying like, hey, congrats on your sales, you know, like people like to be kind of acknowledged,
oh yeah,
right? When somebody says that to me, I'm like, oh, I appreciate that they're congratulating me because I feel good. They made me feel good. How can I help you in return? Right? It is transactional, but it has to be genuine.
yeah, and I agree about that too. And I was like, in terms of being genuine too, like don't be like fake about it. Like I'll like people be like, oh, like great last video, or like that video is so helpful. I'm like, oh, what was your favorite part? And like it's like this generic like, oh, like it was just really good and help. It's like you didn't watch the video, or like maybe
Yeah,
you watched a minute of it, or what. Like they're just like little like someone's like, oh, but like at this time and when you did that, I was like, okay, like they watched, like not that I care, but like don't like kind of like come up and be like, oh yeah, I like watch all your stuff and like you help, and then it's like, I don't know, it seems weird to me.
exactly. And like when I did my video with Miles, people were like, wow, congratulations on your growth. You know, you did like 10x month to month. And then they asked me very specifically, so what did you do with your VAs that got you to help? So I knew they watched the whole video and
Right?
they
Yeah.
wanted the specifics. So it was kind of like, to give an example, they congratulated me on the growth. It was genuine. Then they gave me a specific question to ask, or to ask me in regards to, so like, how did you train your VAs, or how did you get to the point where they were doing so well for you? Right? As opposed to like, where do I find the VA? I mean, you can literally just YouTube that and everyone knows, you know, online jobs or Upwork, you can get it there. But when they ask me those specific nuances, at that point, I want to give them that information because they've watched it. I've offered good value, and I want to offer more better value at that point. Right. And so I think that's a great example for anybody who's listening is, you know, be genuine and have specific questions to ask, because that makes any person that you're talking to more inclined to want to help you.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, just those two things. Yeah, you just said. It's just like, yeah, just like, yeah, be a normal person and just do
Exactly.
what you would want someone to do for you.
Exactly. All right, sweet. So we covered that topic. I think another one would be scaling. I know both of you and I are like at the point of scaling pretty aggressively right now. How much did you do last month?
74K.
Yeah, that's
Biggest
amazing.
month.
Yeah,
I will say I was caught off guard. I did not think I was gonna do like 74K, but like it was Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
that last
Uh,
week of November was
yeah, we
insane.
did like 15K just on those 2 days alone. I was like,
Yeah.
holy smoke, like this is insane.
I had a 7K day and I was like, is this like a fat, like a, you know, is this a one-time thing? And then I got another one and I was like, wow, like this is just incredible.
Yeah, it's just like what it's like it's almost hard to explain like how to break it down. It's just like I don't know, you just like keep putting in the work and it's like people are like, "Oh, do you like have sales goals and stuff?" I'm like, "Not really. Like I just spend money every day or
Yeah.
whatever I'm doing or not for research or whatever and then like kind of let the numbers be the numbers." I mean, that's always how I work. I'm not saying like goal setting is bad or anything. But like that's just how I roll. Like, just
Yeah.
put it in every day and then like, before you know it, you're doing like 74K. And I think sometimes when you obsess over the sales, you make really bad decisions. Like when you're like, oh, I have to do like 80K, like you start buying bad stuff, like maybe you're taking less profit to like get there. And like that's all situational. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but like I feel like it's almost just like if you're gonna go to the gym instead of being like, oh, I need to lose like 2 pounds this week. Like if you just go to the gym every day, like you're gonna lose 2 pounds eventually.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? If
exactly.
you're doing like the right things.
And I think people are so focused on things they can't control, right? Like we can't control whether or not the sales are going to be crazy. Like I had a zero sale month a day in November, like zero. And I did very well in November, you know, but like that, I mean, that's out of my control. What can I do? All I can do is buy more inventory that's profitable and sells quickly. And so, you know, I don't put my focus on that. I put my focus on finding good leads, you know, doubling down on the good ones, getting rid of the ones that aren't good, and really doing the things that like on a day-to-day basis are going to help your business.
Yeah, I think when it comes to scaling too, it's like it's really funny. Like when I first started, it was like, oh, like I'm gonna get tactical arbitrage. I'm gonna do this. I gotta do like Keepa and like fancy and like what like really got me to scale was just like kind of just like doubling down what's working and just like compounding like what I've learned. And I think a lot of people just get like caught in like weird stuff like anytime I post about like having like I got in a bad habit when I first started. I'd be like, oh, because I have two Amazon accounts, like the book account and the OA account. And like so it would confuse people. So I'd be like, oh, on the OA account, like this is what happened this month or whatever. So like I am in that habit, like on the OA account, we did like and all the time, like five people ask, like, how do you get a second account? It's like you don't need a second account. Like
Yeah.
worry about your first account. Like it, getting a second account is not going to help restock limits. Like you start from zero. You don't have any ungates. You
Yeah.
don't have any reviews. Like you need all separate software. It's risky. Like you just don't need any of that stuff for like what happens if stuff gets returned or this or that. Or a lot of people too are like, oh, like should you buy this or would you buy this? It's like test it. Like do a test buy. Like that's my new answer. Do a test buy. Like buy three or four, figure out what happens. Like because it's like, oh, if I look at the graph, I'm like, oh yeah, like buy it. And they're like, oh, he was wrong, or he was like, I don't know. Like I just test buy stuff. Like
Yeah, and there's times where it looks good when you source it, and by the time it checks in, everybody else has bought it too. And so, the test buy is ultimately gonna, one, give you a chance to see what happens without much risk involved. And if it sells quickly, then, triple, quadruple down on that test buy. Right. But I think that's like a really important step that a lot of new sellers skip because they're just like, oh, but this deal is not going to be around. It's Black Friday and it's not going to, it doesn't matter because what if you've got $5,000 and you buy a $3,000 worth and that item doesn't sell or it tanks, you give up 60% of your capital to something that's not going to work out in the long run.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. And like a lot, I always think that all the time. Like, oh, like what if this certain store like never has the sale? Like they all have the sales. Like some are like in a month, some are in 6 weeks, some are in 8 weeks, some are like quarterly. Like they all have like their like nuances and stuff. And it's like, yeah, like whatever. It's like whatever. It's what you want to do. Like I feel a lot of the times, like I've been getting a lot of questions about. I actually just did a posted a YouTube video, and a lot of people are talking about like merch fulfilling in like Q4, and I'm like, that's great and like everything, but like it's not really something I want to do. It's a great opportunity, but like people are like, you're an idiot if you don't merch fulfill. Like you're a bad seller if you don't do this. I'm like, your business. Like
Yeah.
you can do it or you don't have to do it. Like people are like, I really don't want to offer 2 day. Like how much you charge? I'm like, I'm not offering 2 day. Like it's all standard shipping. Like it's literally like 5 states away from me in like a circle. Like that's it. Like someone wants it, great, but like I'm not going crazy. Spend a ton of money in September and October. So to all go to FBA and like that's my plan. And
Yeah,
I know
I'm
a
right
lot
there
of
with
like
you.
huge sellers aren't doing any merchant fulfilled stuff.
I'm right there with you. I don't have time to package all that stuff. So I'm okay with it. I got inventory checking in every day. I don't need to flip my money any faster. I know some people they want to, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but our business is still growing, month to month. So we don't necessarily need to do all that work. And for me personally, I don't have much time outside of like what I just put or invest into Amazon business because I have a couple of others. So, I'm just gonna maximize what time I have, which is gonna be purchasing and sourcing inventory, right? Like for me, packaging and all that stuff is going to be a waste of time. Like not waste of time. It's a it's a less of a value task as opposed to a high value task of just purchasing and sourcing, right? And maximizing my time that I'm inputting into the business.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is it's always like a bad idea in most cases to like follow the crowd like blindly. Like everyone's like I saw someone post the other day like, oh like I said everyone said to merch fulfill and like I did, but then like I didn't realize like you can't ship like XYZ. So I ended up like losing $10 on everything. It's like they're like, I thought I had a merchant fill. It's like, no, you don't. Like you can make plenty of money like just doing FBA, or like people think like after December 1st, like Amazon's gonna like shut down and not like process stuff. It's like, no, it just might take longer. And like they could get I have a warehouse like about, I don't know, 2 hours away ish from like an Amazon warehouse. And like UPS comes at like 1 o'clock. Like sometimes it gets there the same day. So it's
Yeah,
like
that's
it
crazy.
just really depends. Like, and so
Yeah.
that person might get it before Christmas. Like it just really depends. But like I don't know. I think people just like see like random stuff and like I just don't know how they come up with some of this stuff, like of like
Yeah.
what's going on or whatever. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's really important to like play your own game and like
Yeah,
do
you
what you
need
need to
to
do.
know the nuances too, right? Because like I had somebody DM me too that they offered 2 day shipping, but they didn't price it in. So they lost all their profit on the item and were forced to send it in or else you're gonna get a bad review.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you don't want to jump into something that you don't have much experience in, especially at the busiest time of the year, you know, where it could affect your business. A bad review kind of kind of puts a big dent in your Amazon profile. So
What a lot of people don't realize too is like if you like screw up, like a lot of someone canceled an order and they were like, they asked me, should I cancel it? And then like, it was like 8 hours later, I just saw it. I was like, no, I already canceled it. So like when you're like selling Amazon, like they track your metrics. So if you're merchant fulfilling and like you only merchant fulfilled like 10%, like 10 packages, let's just say, you decide to cancel one. Well, now your cancel rate is like 10%, and it has
yeah,
to be like under 4. And like to get that ratio the other way is really, really hard. Like to really push it down, like because you didn't want to lose like $20. It's like, well,
yeah.
now you're not going to be shown in the buy box for merch fulfilled. Like the customer's going to give you a bad review, and like Amazon's going to be like, I don't want to hear it. Like these are the rules.
And one thing I also noticed too is that like FBA really protects you. If anything goes wrong, they cross it out and they say, "Hey, this was fulfilled by Amazon. We'll take care of this issue." So it saves your ratings, right? Like I've had 2 or 3 of those where they give me a 1 star, right? They were upset, but because it was FBA, the blame is not on me, and my profile is once again cleaned from that, so I have a perfect rating. As opposed to with merchant fulfilled, they're not going to be able to help you there because that was all on you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You run that risk as well. So, I don't think it's like a bad thing, but you should really know what you're doing when it comes to merchant fulfilling before you really dive into it. A lot of people are just kind of so caught up in that, oh, you can make money faster, you can flip it faster with less risk. Well, if you're getting bad ratings, that's also a bad risk too for your business, as opposed to being able to buy something and then return it if it doesn't sell to the merchant fulfill aspect.
Yeah, I do think I have like strong feelings on that. Like you should not return. I think you should eat it. Because like it's a mistake and like you should kind of like
Yeah.
own that and learn from that. But like yeah, I do think that too. Like a lot of people it's like exactly what you're saying. Like if when you don't know and you just kind of jump into something, like I know there's gonna be like probably hundreds of people who are gonna like merchant fulfill Legos and like they're gonna sell and they're gonna realize they're like, oh, I don't have a big enough box for that. Like I didn't realize the Legos were this big, or like
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was gonna cost $30 to ship it from to California. And now you're like losing money, and it's just like
Yeah.
instead of like you're worried about not making it, well now you're like losing it. Like so that's even worse.
And also too, they don't realize that like you might get a bunch of sales, but just wait, you're gonna get a bunch of returns that you have to process yourself because you merchant fulfilled it, right? Which is even more of a headache as opposed to just letting Amazon, the FBA program, handle everything, which really just once again gives us peace of mind and we're allowed to just focus on purchasing and buying, which I'm sure everyone listening here can agree that that is the most profitable action that you can take on a daily basis for your business.
Yeah, last year I'm not saying merch fulfilled is bad by any means. It's just like something you shouldn't just jump into. But I sold like this Harry Potter Lego set, and this was like before, like I was new. I knew how to merch fulfilled books, not other stuff. And like basically it cost like 26 bucks to ship. I barely just had like a box to like fit in it. And then they returned it. So it cost me like 26 to ship there. I had to pay for them to ship it back to me, which was like another $20. And then that was like all the profit. Like that it was
Yeah.
top. And now like I'm selling it at maybe I'm probably gonna lose money or I lost money, so I had to like ship it out again for
Yeah.
another $20.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
like that was kind of it. And I was like, oh well,
Yeah.
like, learn for next year.
You definitely got to know what you're doing. And me personally, I guess I just more of a fan of the automated aspect of just Amazon handling everything. Like it just brings so much ease into the business of like how to run, like as far as the day-to-day operations. Don't have to deal with customers. Don't have to deal with messages from people saying like, "Hey, like I'm going to return this. This is damaged or whatever," right? And just like really allow, like for example, I'm not sure how the whole thing works if it's damaged in shipping, but like with the Amazon FBA, if it is damaged during shipping, that's not our fault, right? We get reimbursed, right? Because Amazon was handling all that. So I think it has both its pros and cons to each side, but you really got to know what you're doing.
Great.
And so to go back to the question on scaling, I wanted to ask you, what helped you scale? Is it credit cards? Is it more of like a consistent cash flow coming back? What has been your leverage or route as far as scaling?
So for me, I'm very pro cash on hand. I do like use credit for everything because I like the points and stuff. But at any given time, like I probably could like wipe out all the credit. Like if American Express, like you have to pay everything, like I could do that.
Yeah,
That's kind of how I like to roll. Um, yeah, because like I just don't. I've been getting a lot. It's like sad. So like credit is great. Like I don't have any issues with credit. And I was actually talking with someone about this today. And like I've gotten or heard a lot of stories of people who like ran up a card for like 10K and like what they bought like obviously didn't work out or whatever. And like they can't pay it off because like yeah, like you could get your money back from Amazon, but like you might have shelled out like 1,000, and now like you're only getting back 200 after fees.
yeah,
So now like you're 800 in the hole. So like that 10 grand could actually maybe you only get like 4 grand back, which you know what I mean? Like it just really depends. And now they're in like credit card debt. And like I think a lot of people what they don't realize is like a lot of people who are like, oh, I spent like 30K today or 40K today. Like a lot of the times, one, they're like really experienced, and two, like they're doing it in a group. Like I'm much
yeah,
more confident in Q4 when like I send a lead to someone and everyone's like, "Oh, that's fire!" Like 3 or 4 people, I'm like, "Okay, like let's go." Like you know, some other like today I sent something to someone and they're like, "Oh, like don't buy that." Like Amazon, like it's out of stock, but like they're holding the buy box saying that like they'll ship it in February. I was like, "Oh, missed that." Like thanks, like kind of thing. So like I think there's a lot of like and a second thing to scale, like there's nothing wrong with like just like growing it slowly. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I feel like a lot of people probably should look into that. Like if you had 50 grand, like I don't know, that could be like pretty dangerous to like start like just buy 50 grand worth of stuff. Like I don't know, maybe buy like 5 grand and like see how you do and then like kind of figure it out that way. So I've used like yeah, credit. And then like yeah, I had a pretty profitable book business. So like I had a pretty good, you know, run up like of maybe like 30, 40K that I was able to
yeah.
like, put in right away. Not right away, but like I was spending like 10-ish K a month. And as I got more comfortable, like 20, and kind of like now we just spent like close to 70 in October.
Yeah, I think the big thing about credit, so I'm a little bit on the opposite side. I do utilize credit a lot, and I'll be honest, like a lot of my credit cards are maxed out, but it's because I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I'm not just test buying things that aren't working. There are replens that have sold for me for 2, 3 months now, to where it's like I just got to buy more, right? It's not something where I'm like, let's just take a chance and max out 10K worth of stuff. And here's the thing too, is that a lot of people, you guys might be watching, you see these people with Amex Platinum or Amex Gold cards. They don't realize those are charge cards. You have to pay that right at the end of the statement, right? And unless you got things that sell in the first week of checking in, you're not going to be able to pay off that full balance. and you're going to gain interest on that. So you're going to lose money, or not all of it, but you may lose profits to interest, right? And so for me, one of the big things is I don't use any charge cards,
Okay.
right? I don't use a single charge card. Every card that I have has been a 0% intro APR for 12 months. So
Oh
it's a free
wow.
loan, right? For 12 months from the bank, no interest, no annual fees. So at least that gives me some freedom that if something should sell slower, I don't have the burden of having to pay that or pay interest, which interest is pretty darn significant on these charge cards, right?
Oh
I think
God,
it's
they're like in the 20,
5%.
30%.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people should pay attention to is that understand which type of credit cards you're going to use if you're going to utilize it. And two, you need to only be using credit cards in a sense where your items are selling or you're test buying, right? Because if not, you're just essentially just like closing your eyes, throwing a dart, and hoping everything works out. And I've gotten a lot of these messages from people, especially with personal credit. You should not run up your personal credit. That's the worst thing you can do because now you're gonna ding your personal credit score. Like as opposed to all my credit cards are business, credit cards, so they don't show up on my personal. And so I can max out my credit cards and it doesn't affect my personal credit score. If you max out your personal credit cards, your score will absolutely tank,
Oh
right?
God.
And then it'll start to accrue interest, and you're just going to be in like this backwards cycle, where you're not progressing, or whatever profits you made, you have to give that up to interest. So for those that are listening, I think it's really important that they understand what type of cards to use and when to use credit cards. So for me, I don't even have a VA right now currently because I have a lot of like really good performing ASINs. I just don't have enough money. Like I'm just trying to buy as much as I can because like they sell so fast. I'm getting that money back, and then like I pretty much what I do is like I'll spend 10K, and as soon as I get the 10 or 5K back, I'm like clearing that 5K worth of debt and I'm buying another 5K, right? But that's because it's working and it's selling. I'm making profits. It's being flipped really, really fast. And so I can utilize debt in that sense, right? The loan or credit card to make more money. And I'm not paying interest for another 7 months on it.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's a
So
smart way to do it. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, so there's a
Yeah.
time and place, but like when you're new, it definitely isn't the right route to just get your personal credit card or get a Amex Platinum or Gold and think you can just run it up because you'll owe that within 30 days, right, of purchasing. And you might get a couple of days after, the statement lands. You might get, I think, what is it, 3 weeks or whatever, but unless you have like the Amex Plum, you're gonna be in a position where you're forced to pay that back, and then all of a sudden you're not getting the sales as quickly as you thought, especially as a new seller. You don't even know if it's gonna sell fast,
Yeah.
and you just kind of dig yourself into a hole, right? So I think there's definitely a time and place. For me, it's just like all my items sell so fast, I just don't have enough money at this point to really just buy as much as I can. So and so I do have one charge card, which is my MX Green, but I only maybe spend 5 to 10K where it's like I'm getting 40K back a month from Amazon. I can pay that immediately and still pay no interest. Right.
Right.
But sometimes the deals are too good to pass up. I need I need to get them right then and there, especially with Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Like I just had to take advantage of those deals.
Yeah, and I think that's like an also like an interesting like point as well. It's like you have to almost like buy when it's hot. Like you're not getting those deals. Like that's one situation where like maybe you'll get like deals like that maybe like once before like it
Yeah.
happens again. But that also means that like you have to I think there's a huge misconception that like you buy this water bottle, you send 10 to Amazon, and they get it and like it's live on their website. And like to sell, it's like, no, like maybe two or three will be live and you'll sell those. And the other 10 are going to like different fulfillment houses and they're not
Yeah.
going to be available live or for someone to buy in like the prime window for like a week or two. So like you're already looking at like 3 weeks like down the line.
Exactly.
before like
Exactly.
your thing like even sells. I mean, there's stuff obviously that like maybe they'll keep it all in one warehouse and just sells really fast. But like for most things, like you gotta just realize that like you're like 6 to 8 weeks out, most likely,
Yeah.
from getting that money back or all of it back. And that's if everything goes well and to plan.
And especially as a new seller, people don't realize that Amazon holds your money at first. So they think they're just going to get it back right away. They're going to hold it in the reserve because you're a new seller and they don't have history to go off of, whether the return rates are high or whatnot. So they think, okay, I sold all this. How come I haven't got my money? Well, they're probably going to pay you on the next cycle in 2 weeks because they have to put that initial $1,000 whatever on reserve, and then it's essentially a cycle where once you're established, it kind of you're just 2 weeks behind on everything, kind of, right? So I might sell things now, but I'm not going to see it till next week. But the stuff I sold a month ago, I'm going to get the money on this week, right?
Exactly.
And they don't realize that. They just think it's such a quick process to where I ship it in, it checks in, it's available, I sell it, I get my money back in a week. Like there's shipping times from 3 to 6 weeks minimum, right? After that, then they hold it in reserve. And in the beginning, like I don't even think you get daily payouts in the beginning.
No.
You're just gonna have to wait 2 weeks after that. And chances are in the first 2 weeks, it's a reserve. So you're not even gonna see that money for a month after that, right? Since the day it sells.
Yeah,
So I
no,
think,
those are all really good points. And like, yeah, it's one of those where again, like we were talking about earlier, it's like you just jump into something without like knowing all the stuff, like it's just never a good idea.
yeah, and for those that are listening, like, oh, like we mentioned that there are times to go heavier. If you haven't test bought it, it's not worth it unless you know what you're doing. I know some of like your leads, like you'll go a little heavier on because you have the experience. You'll be able to really analyze the keep it chart and the data to make the decision to go heavier. But as a new seller, you don't want to be going heavier because you just don't know. And that was like one of the biggest mistakes I made. I think I found like a 50% ROI lead and I spent $2,000 on shoes, like the same ASIN, didn't even like get varieties or different sizes. I was like, this is it. And it did not sell at all. Like I just got absolutely crushed on it. And that was the mistake. I didn't understand the concept of test buying. I didn't really know what that meant. And I just kind of let the greed take over and make the decisions for me instead of a logical one, right?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like I would say out of like the 65K we spent in October or November, I would say about 90% of that stuff we bought, like been buying throughout the year. And like, you know, I know exactly how those Kiva charts move, like why it might be a little lower than it was before, and that it's going up, or like, the seller counts, or it's a brand that I'm like super familiar with and in the same category where I kind of
Yeah.
know those Kiva charts work too. I mean, obviously, like things happen, but like for most part, like we're like Q4 is not the time to be honest, like to test buy because like the volume is so much higher. You're gonna get like false results anyway. Like something that maybe you could sell like 20 a month, like you might sell like 20 in a day, but like it's just because it's like Q4 right now.
But I think that's the big thing is that people just have to be patient because you'll get to that point where you can skip that step of test buying, especially when you have a lot more capital to allocate. But in the beginning, when you have $1,000, $2,000, it's like really important that you buy 10 different ASINs at $200 worth or $100 worth because you don't know the nuances of the business. You don't know what a good keep a chart is, and you won't understand it until stuff starts selling or it doesn't start selling. Right? And that's when you start to connect the dots like, okay, this sells very well. I need to double down on that, triple down on that. This looked very well, good, but it would like you could make the connection that it was almost too easy to find and everybody jumped on it. And chances are, and this is what I've learned, if it's too easy to find, if it's like on the first page of the sale, everybody's gonna buy that. Some of my best ASINs are like literally in the depths of the website, like on the last page, where only the select few who have the patience to go through and manually source everything are going to find that one.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point too. And I think, I guess, like, as an example, like, it might be helpful. So, like, a lot of stuff I'm selling now, like a test buy, like a normal, like, test buy slash into, like, go deep replan, like, for me, it would be like, depending on the price, I'm either buying 5 or 10, like, off the bat, and I'm going to see what happens. If, like, the 5 or 10 sell for kind of like the profit I want, then I'm like, for even like reorder, like, I don't like, oh, 5 sold, I'm gonna order more. Like, no, it has to sell through. Then I want to wait a week, see if there are any returns or like issues. I'm like, okay, great. Like, if it still looks really good, like, I'll double the order, like, to maybe 10 or 20, see how that goes, and, go from there. And then maybe triple it, or maybe if keep it as like kind of like, it maybe looks like it's like more people are coming on it. Maybe I just place like another 10 to 20 and see how that goes. And then, like, after that, like, it just really depends on how much I think I could sell then. And then I'm buying either triple or times four. I like to spread out a lot of stuff. I don't like to be like
Yeah.
very like I have like probably almost 150, 160 ASINs that, like, I'm across. And that doesn't mean like I'm not, like, I sell a lot of apparel, so like obviously there's like small, medium, large is like kind of its own ASIN. But for the most part, it's like pretty spread out. And then it's like you just go from there, and it's, you get like that pattern. But if you're following along, like, that 5 to 10, it's gonna take you a month before like it sells through or whatever, depending on how quickly it sells. And then, like, when you double the buy, right? Because you also have to figure in, like, it's not like you go to the website and they like hand it to you through the screen. Like, it's gonna take the site like a couple days to send it to you, a couple days
Yeah.
for you to like send it in. So like you're really looking at like almost a 3 to 4 month process to like really test buy through like 3 or 4 times. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's a faster mover, but like for the most part, like, I know a lot of stuff that like I bought, especially when I first started. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe this. And then I'm like, screw it, like, I'm gonna reorder now. Like, I'm not gonna follow the process, and I double down on it. And everyone comes on it, or like something like not good happens. I'm like, you just gotta follow like what you said to
Yeah.
do. And like obviously there's some exceptions to that, but like for the most part, like 99% of the time, that's kind of the process I'm doing. It's like buy a couple, see how it goes. And that was probably like one of the biggest things that really changed it for me. Like, when I first started, everyone's like, oh, you have to buy 18. Like, it's gonna go to one warehouse. That's what you
Yeah.
test. Like, that's terrible advice. Like, I mean, maybe, well, for me, it didn't work for me. Maybe for other people it worked. I don't like to generalize things, but for me, that did not work out well. And when I heard someone say, like, hey, like, you can test by three, like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, especially if it's like $50 or like, and there was a lot of stuff I passed on because, like, I don't want to buy 18 of this. Like, it's kind of risky. But like if you have to buy 18 of something at like $50, like, ooh. But if you can only buy three, it's like, okay, like, I'll buy three, see how it goes. And like maybe you're not winning the buy box as much or whatever because you don't have a lot of stock. But like you don't even know if it's gonna sell. So like don't even worry about that. Like, for like a lot of people are, oh well, like the buy, it's like you don't even know if it sells. Like, what do you care about, like, oh, you gotta send, like, no, just send in three, see what happens, and then send in six or whatever you want to do, and just kind of like build it slowly.
And I think like a good example would be like it, let's say that, well, we're all business owners technically, right? And so let's say that you were to start up a Rouse, you wouldn't just buy like a bunch of Ritz crackers and load up every shelf with it. You don't even know what to buy. You don't know what the industries or that market is like in that area, right? That the demographic. You'd buy a bunch of stuff, spread it all out, buy more of the stuff that's selling very well. You have to put some of the stuff that isn't selling on clearance. Don't
Yeah.
buy more of that. Get rid of that off the shelf. But you can only do that and get through that process by test buying, right? It's not something where you're just gonna um it's not a logical move to make as a business owner who's, especially because we're in the retail game, right? So we're retail sellers. And so like you need to test everything. It's not like it would be such a risky business move to just buy a bunch of one thing because you think, oh, these are super popular, everyone loves this. Well, maybe that demographic doesn't like that product,
Yeah.
right? Maybe nationally they do, but maybe wherever you're sending it to, they just don't care about that product, right? So it's really, I think, important that people see the business like a real business, not just something like, oh, this deal is so good, like we have to take it. Like these are not like Jordan shoes that like have all this hype around it in limited quantity. Most of the times you can buy as much as you want on some of these websites, so everyone also has access to that, right? And so the only way you're really going to know what to continuously buy, and as far as inventory, if you were to like open up a brand new Ralph's, is to test everything,
Yeah, I
right?
think a lot of people like to like you don't have to do this for everything, but like we're in Q4, so Lego is a really good example of this. It's like, oh, like this is such a good deal. Like, okay, like that's great. Like it's a great deal on whatever site you're looking at. But like then you have to look at like the 5 or 6 other competitor sites. Like, do they have it in stock? Like because there's a lot of times where like I'll buy it. It's like, oh, Lego's out of stock. Like that's great. But then like Target has it, Walmart has it, Best Buy has, and like they're all running sales on it. So something that was like, oh, this is like, oh, like I get like no, like there's a lot other stuff out there to buy.
Yeah, 100%. Like I bought some Legos and I kind of was starting to keep a chart about how I was out of stock last year. And I shit you not, I bought them for like 15, trying to sell, or maybe 20 to sell them at 35. They're sitting at $13 because they're on sale at every single website right now. So it's like, wow. And luckily I didn't go heavy on them because I don't have much experience with Legos. But that was like a big indicator to me, like, one, it being my first time around. So, I'm not about to go heavy on something, no matter, I don't care if the ranking is 10,000 or this estimated sales is 10,000. I don't have experience on it. No matter how long I've been selling for, I need to figure out how it goes first, and then I can decide, right? And maybe this can be my little test run for next Q4 where I can double down next time around. But I wouldn't want to put myself in a position, especially when you start to become established, your money can be utilized better elsewhere, And to add to this, you had mentioned that you buy things year round. I think that's been one of the biggest things for me is to buy inventory that sells year round. Because seasonal, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be put in a position where come January 1st, nobody wants to buy toys, right? Everything's going to have a end of Christmas sale. So you want to build your base of inventory and ASINs around year-round inventory that's going to sell throughout the year, and then add seasonal inventory as a supplemental type of thing where you can take advantage of it during those times for inflated prices. But you don't want to do something where it's like, for those that are listening, I know toys are going to be good in the next 3 weeks or so, but you don't want to buy so much to where now you're stuck with 100 units and you're going to have to take a massive loss on them afterwards.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a really good point. And it's like I think like two people don't almost think like replenishables products are like great and like there there are a lot of products that like are probably like somewhat replenishable but you just might not think of them as it. So for example, like I guess like there's some stuff you could sell like all year round, but like right now it's the most profitable. So maybe you
Yeah.
don't buy it year round, but like during this time, like you can. So technically it's kind of replenishable because you could like buy it for every like, start buying in October or whatever for right now. And I think like a lot of the times, like there's a lot of people are craving like replenishables, and that's great, but like I could tell you a lot that I've known like some really big sellers, and I would think like 80% of their business or 90 is like replenishables, or like no, it's only like 20%. Like we
Yeah.
constantly need to be finding more stuff, like testing other stuff, like because people come on, other people find out about it, like I don't know, maybe like the market gets saturated with it or like other people are running sales. So it's like you always kind of have to be like sourcing and like thinking about, what's going on, and like you just can't get like lazy. There was those, I think it was the beginning of this year. I just was like having trouble sourcing. I was running like a book business and an eBay, all this other stuff that like just took up a lot of time. And I was like, I'm having trouble finding stuff. And it's just because like I didn't have a lot of time to spend on looking for stuff. And then like I kind of got caught. I found some good replenishables. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna keep replenishing. So I can't find anything, and I want to like hit the spend goal. It was like a terrible mistake because like the replenishables were like gone in like I don't know a month or two, and then I was like I didn't have anything to buy like to replace it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even have like as you get bigger and the more you do it, like I have a whole list of probably like 1,000 products that like I've bought. So yeah, I can like go through that list now. It's but like when you're just getting started and like don't have anything, like you want to just be test buying like as much as you can, like as often as you can.
And I think test buying never really stops because
No.
from what I haven't been selling that long, but from what I've like talked to people about, a lot of the times their best replans will no longer be a replan. It'll maybe show up on a lead list or you can't access it anymore. So to kind of protect yourself for future, like future proof your business, you're always looking for new ASINs so that if something happens to the replan, you have other products to purchase, right? It's just a constant cycle of like replanning what's working, but always looking for new products so that you're always kind of protecting yourself as a business owner, because who knows if that one product may disappear or the price drops, so it's no longer as profitable as it could be and your money could be utilized elsewhere, right? And I think a lot of people get stuck on that because they want to just like make money so fast, they get blinded by the ranking. Two, they don't realize like this is an ever evolving business. Like there's people who say, dude, I sold this for 2 years and it's completely gone now. It's my best selling ASIN. I can't sell it anymore. Right. The supplier either closed down, shut down, he lost access to it. The deals that he had just weren't there. The price tanked. I mean, things are going to happen in this business no matter how good you are. Right. And to protect yourself or protect the downside, you always have to be test buying new items so that you can have other stuff to purchase or move your money to should your main replan disappear.
Yeah, it's yeah, definitely interesting. Yeah. And I feel like yeah, a lot of people I think like that's like the one of the biggest traps is like obviously like I don't know. I used to not be a big like I'm still not a big fan of like posting like sales numbers because it's like it's all relevant to like your situation or whatever. But like I feel like most of the time it doesn't inspire people. It makes people feel like really bad that they're either above or below or whatever their situation is, and it's like turns into something that's like negative. Um, but it's just very interesting. Like just to go back, this has popped in my head. I sort of like one of the biggest sellers I know. I'm not gonna mention their name or whatever, but they like posted. They're just like, oh, like here's like some feedback I gave to the team, and like they'll do probably close to like 75 million this year, like crazy. And they're buying like on some ASINs just 100 or just 50 or just 30. I'm like, that's insane. Like, not that it's insane, but like, you would think they're buying like 500 or 1,000 of each. It's like, no, they're buying like 36.
Yeah, they're just spread out that wide. They've covered like every little nook and cranny in every
Yeah.
category. Yeah. Well, that was awesome. I really appreciate that, man. This was a really good conversation.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Do you have any other topics that you want to cover? I feel like we covered a good amount of information so far.
What's like one of your like biggest takeaways now? Like, I mean, how long have you been selling?
I've been selling since March,
Okay.
and I kind of failed at first. I was doing like 3,000 a month in revenue. It's kind of doing it by myself. Had to unfortunately take losses on a lot of the stuff that I got a little too excited on and didn't work out. And like last month I did 85K, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
But I think one of the biggest takeaways is that one, you have to learn how to utilize other people's money, but in the correct manner. You don't want to just put yourself in a situation where you just owe a bunch of money and it's accruing interest. Two, networking, but doing it in the right way. Like I have a lot of people who just want free information off of me, and I'm glad to give it when I can. But when it's very like ingenuine, I don't want to help them. Like I honestly don't want to help them. And maybe that sucks to hear for some of you guys, but it's honest. Like why would you want to help someone you're getting bad vibes off of, you know?
Yeah.
So knowing how to properly network has been very good for me, right? And number three, I think manual sourcing. Manual sourcing has changed the game for me because I've realized that the harder it is to find, the better it is for my business. If
Agreed.
it's easy, everybody's hopping on that. It might look good when you're sourcing it. Just give it 5, 6 weeks. Everybody's going to be on there,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely
And
a lot more manual versus like reverse sourcing. Like
yeah,
it just because it's one, it's harder to find stuff, and two, it's just yeah, there's a lot of extra edges or like things you could do if you're just manually doing it. Like once you find like a good site, like I feel like when you reverse sourcing, and I'm not, we still do it, but it's like you're late to the game. Like someone else already has it, or like
yeah,
there's like 20 or 30 other people who are already on the listing, and like you're gonna be like 31 and 32. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's fine. But like I made that mistake a lot where like I was reverse sourcing and I was like, oh, okay, like the buy box is like shared or whatever, but there's like you're sharing between 30 people, like versus like
right,
5 or 10. Like it's a
yeah.
big difference. And it's just like, okay, like how do I find more? And it's like doing manual, like you were talking about before, like you're going to like the last page or like out of 20 pages, like you're on page 13 or whatever. And that's where like a lot of the stuff is. And I think even as good as like all the tools are out there, like when you're just kind of like typing something in or like right clicking to open something, like sometimes like the best way to do it is like just type it into Amazon, like manually, be like Nike hoodie and like see what like comes up. Because like it's gonna be hard to like find on Amazon like red Nike hoodie double XL like drawstring. Like that's not in there. It's like Nike hoodie. And then like you
Especially the
find
time.
one that's red, and then like that's the thing.
Yeah, and the titles are very generic on Amazon, right? The seller and description might be super in depth, but the titles, they'll say like women's low top sneakers and they're actually Air Maxes or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you want to search it like a regular person would. They're not going to type in model number this. They're going to be like, "Hey, Nike shoes." Like it's going to be very generic in a sense. Um and then also too, I think one thing that's been pretty good for my business, and I think a lot of people will appreciate this one, is I kind of got out of clothing and shoes. It was great for me in August. I did like 48,000 off literally just Nike clothing and shoes. But right now, I've realized that the return rate is just not ideal. It's just really excessive, especially during times like the holidays. Like, they might get it for somebody and then they don't like the sizing or it doesn't fit. They're going to return it to you. Or it's a Halloween party. They're going to get it for an outfit and return it to you the next day through Amazon. Right. So, I've looked into other categories and I've realized my return rate has gone down significantly. And I'm able to really, and here's the thing too about clothing and shoes. There's so many variations that your 4K ranking is not a true 4K ranking. Let's just say with only 4 variations.
Yeah.
Something that has, let's just say, estimated 4,000 sales with only 2 variations, that's a gold mine, right? But when there's 150 different color schemes and sizes, you're really only going to get maybe 20, 30 sales a month on that specific size on top of all the competition that's going to be on that listing with you, right? So I think that has been a really big eye opener for me because especially on those ones, you can go a little bit heavier because the ranking is just so solid with no variations. And so it allows you to really double, triple down on your ASINs as opposed to like clothes. I'm always a little skeptical to buy, like 40 units of a jacket. Like I actually did that and I got killed on it. It was an Adidas jacket and I tried to compete with Amazon, undercut them, and I paid the price on that one too. And that was like in the beginning when I first started with like the Nike shoe. I just like would go super heavy because I was like, this ROI is too good to pass up. And finally, I think it's really important to understand the common sense aspect of seasonal items. So when I first started, I found these winter jackets. It was March when I first started, the tail end of winter, and they were 200% ROI. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna make me rich. I bought $1,000 worth. They were $30 a pop, selling for like 100 or maybe 120. Um, they didn't sell at all. Like I still have some that I'm selling now, and luckily the margin's good enough, but it's not affecting me. And but like one, I paid a bunch of storage fees. Two, that cash flow could have been flipped like 3 times by now. And three, like I wasn't thinking properly in a sense where why would anybody buy winter coats, like rain winter coats in March? It's about to be spring, right? You want to take advantage of that during the summertime and sell it in the wintertime. And so I think that's a big thing that people need to be a little bit more aware of. Like, for example, sandals, it's wintertime. Who's wearing sandals right now?
True.
Right? But during the summer, those Benassis were amazing. They were selling like flying off the shelves. Right. So it's really important to understand seasonal things in a sense of just use common sense. Like, would I buy this during the winter? Like, you're probably not going to buy, unless you live in Florida, you're probably not going to buy sandals.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in like New York, you're not buying sandals. It's going to be freezing cold out there. Right. So it's definitely something to make note of as a new seller where you really want to pay attention to the seasons.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point too. And like I've learned that like with apparel as well. And like I'm not, I do still sell a lot of apparel, but like I definitely approach it much differently. And I agree, like, yeah, there's a lot of variations and like, yeah, like some of those, like you just don't get, like the volume is there, but it's like not. And like you only know doing like a test buy, but
Yeah.
like the returns are brutal. And I didn't buy any apparel, I think in like October, September maybe. And like
That's
it was
still,
just really hard to hit the spend goal. And then someone suggested like you should just like go through all like your apparel and like see like what got returned and just like buy the stuff that didn't. So like I just kind of like pulled the inventory layouts report and just basically divided like sales divided by the returns and like came up with a percentage. I was like, oh, like some of this stuff gets like 25%, 30% returns. There's other stuff that either has zero returns or like 10% returns. And
yeah.
it was like so obvious, like the styles or the type of clothing or the certain sizes that got like returned the most. And I'll just say, like, it wasn't like what I expected. Like the large was like one of the most returned sizes. Like I thought like small or medium would be, and like it wasn't the case. Like it was just crazy to me to like think that. But like,
You would
yeah,
only know that from test buying, right? Like you would only
yeah,
know that actually having concrete evidence at the end, back end of it to where you can make decisions then to adjust.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, and I think like apparel, like it will always be good and stuff, but like I think you also, in a way, have to like kind of source stuff that's like not exciting, but like you enjoy sourcing. Like I don't care about sneakers or clothes or like stuff like
yeah,
that. So it's not like I know there are people who like love sneakers, so like that's perfect for them. But for me,
yeah.
it's like I'm not really into that kind of stuff. So I think like that's also kind of like a tail end like kind of thing where it's just like, you know what, like source like something you're familiar with or what you know, and that makes stuff a lot easier because like if you're into like sneakers, like you're gonna know like all the like crazy sites or stores that like no one else knows of or like when they're gonna be dropped or whatever, which will make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is that there's so many like niches in this business, right? Like my business is completely different than yours. It may have very similar aspects, but there's not like a one way to do it. Like there's not a one size fits all. There's plenty of people there to only do clothing and apparel and do very well. There's people who diversify out of it and they also do very well. So it's I think it's finding out what works for you ultimately. Obviously, you want to test buy everything to see what works,
Yeah.
but you're only gonna know all like what works for you by trying it out and then limiting risk on the amount that you spend per ASIN. And so then you
What
have
categories are you selling most then?
I do a lot of electronics now.
Yeah.
I do a lot of grocery. I used to do a lot of beauty, but then they started coming out with those like 2D or transparency codes and all
Yeah.
this stuff. So that kind of got kicked out of beauty there. I loved beauty at first, super small items, low shipping costs. You can fit like 300 units in a little box. So like I want to get back into it, but recently I haven't been able to find leads in the beauty category. Um, I would say about 10 to 20% of my business is like shoes and apparel, but like I've really started to dwindle down on that just because I got killed on the price taking, to be honest with you. Like it got absolutely destroyed. Like my margins would be a lot better, but I'm liquidating a lot of stuff right now. So it's like it kind of, is affecting my margins. I mean, it was still really good last month. I think I did like 17% margins, which are great.
Good.
But it probably would have been like 20, 22% if I didn't have to liquidate all this other stuff. And they've been sitting in my inventory for a while now, so it's kind of just not worth getting those storage fees. And honestly, I just see it going, the price is going lower and lower. I'm like, it's time. I need to get rid of it.
Yeah, no, that's like a good point. Like, and that's kind of like one of the biggest lessons I kind of learned was like, so for apparel, like as I don't know, again, like yeah, if you tweak the formula, it seems to be working. Like the amount of apparel I'm selling, like I'm not getting the returns. Like usually I would sell it, and then a week later it'd be like, oh, it's return, and maybe they're gifting all of it. I don't know, but it's like really hard, I think, to one like learn a new category. Like I learned like apparel. It took almost like a full year to really learn all the nuances, like who has sales, like how to utilize coupons and like all that kind of stuff. And then just to be like, well, I'm not buying apparel anymore. It's like, well, you were buying like 30,000 ish of it like a month. So like what else are you gonna buy $30,000? Like, right?
Yeah.
You're starting from scratch almost. So like it was like I was like really in October I didn't buy any. And then I was like it's still like a good opportunity because it's Q4. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna do it in Q4 and then like really like in January kind of like see how this goes. This was kind of like the last go around where it's like, all right, like you're buying the stuff that like historically didn't get returned. Like if that stuff, if those numbers don't hold, then like yeah, it's time to like leave like forever
Yeah.
and like not do anymore. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But
I
like
mean,
just like no, this is like a really cash intensive cash flow business. And it's
yeah.
just like you just can't be like, all right, like I'm not gonna buy any more of this stuff. Like the apparel, like while the margins were great because all the returns, like it was still profitable. So like it still made sense to buy it and like grab that cash and like make money on it. It's never a good idea. I've learned this a couple times, like just to stop. Be like, I'm not doing it anymore. Like I'm gonna find other stuff because it's gonna take you a couple weeks like to find that other stuff. And now you're like way behind on like what's
and if
going
it's
on.
working, you don't want to just, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? If it's working, you just keep doing it, and then you can then diversify. Maybe it's not your full catalog of inventory, but maybe you can diversify a little bit to maybe get the return rate down, right? So that could be an aspect to look at too. And I think ultimately, like as long as you're flipping your capital and it's making you money, that's really all that matters because you can make adjustments along the way, right? The one thing you might just want to avoid is losing money on inventory because that's not moving you forward. But I mean, if you're still making 15% ROI, 20% ROI, you're still doing it. It's if it's selling, that's all that matters. And then you can then look to go elsewhere, or just diversify to help your business, and protect yourself. But I don't think that's like a bad category. It's just for what I was doing, my niche, it got really bad. Like I would say like 80% of my ASINs tanked. So I just kind of like had to like evolve as a seller. I just had to find something else. But you're totally right on like you need to always be spending. Like in August I did really well, and then September I barely bought, and my like sales went to 28K. And then I like kind of bought a little bit towards the tail end of September because I realized like, holy shit, what am I doing? Like I should have gone up. My sales went down. And then I did 24K in October, and I was just like, oh no. So in October, I bought like an absolute madman,
Yeah.
right? I was just buying, 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 because that's like the most important thing in this game is just buy. And if things happen, you can adjust along the way. But it's kind of like the sales moniker of like always be closing. You better always be buying as an Amazon seller.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't realize, like, since is like a 4 to 6 week cycle, like, so like you buy the stuff, you get it, you send it in, like, so like when you stop doing that and like you run out of like inventory, well, like now you're like 4 to 6 weeks behind before like the cycle like even starts up again. So it's not
Yeah,
like you're not gonna have one bad sales month, you're gonna have like two for the most
yeah.
part. And then like you have to like catch it, and like you just got to keep like turning it as much as you like possibly can. I mean, obviously, like you can't find anything, I wouldn't spend the money, but like you just got to keep that in mind that like once you kind of stop buying, or like you just always have to have inventory there, or like just keep sending stuff in. Like a lot of people don't talk about it, but like it's Amazon is definitely like, I've learned this from the book account because I haven't sent any books in since July. And like there are books that should be selling, but like they're not. It's just because like I'm not sending stuff in. Like, so like always having stuff like check in, like definitely plays a role in like getting more sales and kind of, I
Yeah.
mean, not like anywhere in the rules or anything, but like that's just something I've noticed. Like when you always have stuff like checking in, or always like kind of shipments being created, like Amazon's like, okay, cool. Like this guy's like sending a lot of stuff. Like let's make sure, you know, we're giving him
You're
the.
100% right on the 2 month lead time because September was down for me, October was down for me, and then finally in November, like all the stuff finally checked in and was ready to sell and go. But like in August, so I bought a bunch of stuff in June, tail end of June. July was like 4K, and then August was 48K. So it was a massive jump, but I stopped buying in August. So then September went down, and then October went down. And so during September was like, oh my God, my sales are crashing. I need to buy, 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 buy. But because of that lead time, it didn't show up in October. And then in November, everything just took off, right? So like that's 100% true. Like it's if you don't buy, you're essentially 2 months behind.
Yeah, because like that's what happened to me too. I started and I was like, oh, this is going great. Like I spent like I think $20,000 in like January. That was the biggest, like that's the most I've ever spent. And I was like, I got scared, like, oh man, like that's a big, like it's a lot of money on like a credit card. So I come
Yeah.
from the book world where like you're spending like, I don't know, like three, four, $5,000 a month, and
Right.
you're turning that into like something much more significant. And it was just like, oh wow. And so I'm like, oh, let me see if this stuff sells. And then like, oh, it all sold. Then it's like, oh well, there's nothing else there to sell. Oh, I'm gonna start buying again. And like I cut out the tail end, and it's like, ah, it's not good. And then like it just like plummeted as like, as you're buying more stuff and like it's getting checked in. So it's always like I'm like trying to keep that in mind now. It's like, you spend a lot of money in like November, and it's just like, while like I'm not gonna overextend myself, it's like I have to be like mindful that like a lot of the stuff is going to sell. So I'm gonna have to be able to replace it, or at least be buying replans or like stuff that's
Yeah.
gonna do well. And just like kind of more for sure stuff, instead of just like kind of like, you know, just sitting on it and just like waiting. Um, so yeah, it's always difficult. Like I find managing replens like very difficult. Just like with check-in times, like there's one thing I've sold like probably close to like 300 or 400 units, and like every time like it's really hard because like the deeper you go. So like the first time I did like 20, then it was 40, then it was 80, then it was like 120. And then it's like, oh, like a lot could change in like 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, like am I really gonna like go 200 on this and like it could like fall apart tomorrow? And then I was like, yep, let's do it. And then like I like totally ran out of stock, and like there's like 180 like an FC transfer, and it's just like, well, like how do I avoid that? Should I buy like another 200 now? Like it's just like really
Yeah.
hard to like manage and like figure out like how to replenish. And like there's like another thing now that like I sold probably like 400 or 500 of them, and then I was like, cool, like I'm gonna order 200, and then like a lot of people came on the listing, and like I didn't get killed. I probably at the end lost like 20 cents on each unit. It sold like the last 100 at like I don't know $20 loss or whatever the hell it was. But it was like now it's like profitable again. Like everyone dropped off. It's like, huh, like I either need to hit it like really hard or like just kind of be
Yeah.
like,
Maybe
uh, like
50.
I bought I think like 60 or 70, and I'm like, that's it. And like now they're all selling at like a higher price. I'm like, crap, like is this the time like to really pull the trigger on this? Or is it like more people are coming? Like I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of times too, like when you're looking at a Keepa, it's like the best it's going to be. Like you're a stock guy, like you can like look at all the charts or whatever, but usually when you're buying it, from what I understand, it's like probably the best time to buy. Like it's never going to be better than like when you're looking
Yeah.
at it like right then. And like you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. You don't know if like some like thing you were banking on that person gets canceled, or like the company gets in trouble or whatever. Like you can only go with the data you have, and it's like really hard to be like, well, in the future like blah 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 is going to happen, and then like a recession happens, you're like, oh shit, like what am I supposed to do? Like it looked good. So it's
Yeah.
always hard to really like buy heavy, like because like stuff just happens.
Yeah, and that I make that analogy a lot because ultimately, like, we can't see into the future. We can only make decisions based on the data we have at that given moment, right? And no matter how good you are as a trader, like you're still gonna take losses on your trades. So, same thing with Amazon. It like there's plenty of times where the keeper looks so good, and 5 weeks later, everybody and their mother is on the listing, right? It's a part of the game. You just have to take the punches and continue to buy more profitable inventory, take some losses on some. But this isn't a game where you're just gonna always be making money. Like last month, I made money on like 70% of my inventory, but I lost liquidating about 30% of my inventory that hasn't sold since August, right? So like it's part of the game. It's something where in the retail game you're always adjusting. You have to liquidate the clearance stuff because it's just sitting on the shelves wasting space. And then double down on the stuff that's working. And then the thing is like that process never ends. It's just
Yeah.
over and over and over. You get good stuff, it doesn't work out, you liquidate it, you find another good ASIN, you double down on that. There'll be a time where that also goes out, and you just literally just churning the money over and over. But a lot of people have to just realize like it's not going to be perfect. As an entrepreneur, nothing's perfect. You just have to learn to adapt.
And like you're going to lose. Like I
Yeah.
like to say, like you never lose money, you just learn like what you did wrong kind of thing. And like sometimes it's nothing. Like sometimes it's like, well, there's some things like the keep will look great. We're like, oh, this is a really good one. And like it doesn't go well. It's like, well, what'd you learn from that? Like you should have bought the 5 and not the 10 because like you thought like this is really good. It's like it almost in a way it doesn't matter what you think. Like if you have the process, like we buy 5 or 10. Like if it's over like $25, it's like probably 5. If it's like under that, like we'll go like 10 or 12. Just depends.
Yeah.
And it's like whenever I break that rule, I usually break it because I broke it and it worked out for 1 out of like the 10. So like I lose on 9, but I'm like, oh, that one time it worked, and it's like no, like, but it didn't work 9 other times. So like, stop doing it.
Exactly. So I think it's just really important just to test buy. Like I still test buy to this day. You know, like a lot of people don't realize, like they think there are times where I might go a little heavier, but I'm not about to dump $10,000 into something I have no clue. Maybe I get an IP complaint because I don't, it looked good
Yeah,
and
that's true.
it hit, right? So you really want to just learn to just sell things through and then go based on that, go maybe double down the next time, but never really go all in on something. Like same with the stock market, you don't go all in on one thing. You're gonna get killed.
Yeah.
Right, and you might get lucky once or twice, but eventually your luck runs out. So same thing with Amazon. You just really need to always be playing it safe because as long as you're flipping and making a profit, who cares how much it really is? And I'm not saying 5% ROI, but if you're being able to at least consistently bring in 12 to 15% margins on your gross, like why not just keep doing that over and over and over? Eventually you get to a point where your sales are at 50K, 100K, 150K, you know? And this business, once you do it long enough, it's just a matter of getting more capital. That's like you just know what to buy at one point. It's not a matter of is this going to work out because you're still ultimately going to test it, then go based on the data after you test it, and then, you know, either go heavier or double down at that point.
Yeah. No, that's really good point.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the interview. I do need to get to my Discord right now.
Yeah, go for it.